Hello there. Welcome to the Future Founders Fireside Chat podcast series, The Journey. This series features weekly discussions about virtual reality, emerging immersive technologies, and entrepreneurship from the 2018 Future Founders VR Fellowship, sponsored by the City of Seattle's Office of Economic Development and produced by 6R. The purpose of this podcast is to learn about the journey that it takes folks to enter the world of VR technologies and entrepreneurship. We hope to create an engaging conversation around emerging technologies in Seattle. This is episode 6, featuring a panel discussion among female pioneers of emerging technologies, including Martina Welkoff, a serial entrepreneur and investor with growth and acquisition experience. Martina is a founding partner at the WXR Fund, a venture fund focused on women-led AR/VR companies, and a venture partner at Jump Canon, a San Francisco fund focused on underrepresented founders in emerging tech. Preet Deol, head of virtual reality at QGS Technologies in Toronto, Canada. Preet is interested in creating an inclusive and empathetic take on technological innovation across disciplines, and is currently focused on her work in quantum geopolitical strategy software at the intersection of virtual reality, blockchain, and artificial intelligence. Diana Fairbank, co-founder and executive director of 6R, Simulated Immersive Experimental Realities, who comes from a filmmaking background and has spent the last 3 years creating 360 video and bringing many new people into the immersive content creation field through 6R's mission to provide XR education to underserved communities. And Heather Zweig, project manager at Pluto VR, who keeps busy by providing leadership on the Seattle VR meetup team and organizing the panels and presentations group. Heather has spent the last 2 years coordinating logistics for the annual Seattle VR Hackathon and Seattle Startup Week's VR/AR track. Moderated by Future Founder VR Fellow Beverly Ahrens at The Collective, Seattle. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm Martina Welkoff, and I'm one of the founding partners at the WXR Fund. So we're a venture fund, actually technically headquartered in LA, although I'm up here in Seattle, focused on women-led virtual and augmented reality startups. And I'm really excited about women laying the groundwork for the next computing paradigm.
I'm Preet Deol, and I'm head of VR at QGS Technologies, and we actually look at taking political risk and see how that affects your financial assets in VR as a data visualization tool. I'm most excited about seeing what we can do in the Pacific Northwest and connecting VR communities between the two cities.
Hi, I'm Diana Fairbank. I am the co-founder and executive director of 6R, partner of Booty, and want to help bring you here tonight. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I am most excited about right now, we're in the middle of our Future Founders VR Fellowship, which is done in a partnership with the Office of Economic Development from the City of Seattle, who has, it's a very exciting program, 4-month intensive for 5 fellows to learn, female and male, to learn VR development, and I am most excited about seeing what we have. A bunch of new equipment coming through new sponsors, and one of the things I'm most excited about coming up is to finally have the tech to be able to do what I wanted to with the 360 video.
Hi, my name is Heather Zweig, and I am a project manager at Pluto VR, which is a virtual reality communications company. I'm also the co-director of CETA, which is the Seattle Immersive Tech Association, and we're kind of like a wonderful big umbrella for all of the Seattle VR meetup and the hackathons that happen here in Seattle. And I am most excited, this weekend we're doing some planning for 2019, so I'm most excited about getting those things going and getting some new speaker panels up and making that happen.
Thank you. And I want to specifically begin with just a brief conversation about your company. If you could go a little bit into that, how, I know we talked a little bit about some of the mission with some of the companies or organizations, but I also want to talk about how you got started. And let's start with how you got started and why you got started.
Great. Okay, so I am very much an accidental venture capitalist, and what I mean by that is I'm a serial entrepreneur, and my first company was in mobile gaming, and when I exited that, Heather's colleague Forrest was a big part of the reason I got interested in virtual reality, along with some other key folks in town, fellow entrepreneurs who planted the seeds and said, we really got to check out this amazing technology. And Forrest specifically said, I think there's a really unique opportunity for women in the space. And that caught my attention. And so as I migrated out of mobile gaming, I started experimenting with more and more VR, was really excited about what I saw, and I actually launched a VR production company, and we did a pretty exciting project with an artist down in the Bay Area in conjunction with the Women's March last year. And it's a longer story, but essentially that project attracted a lot more press than I was expecting, and that press led to some inbound opportunities and a great friendship with an amazing venture capitalist in the Bay Area named Marco De Moraz. And long story short, we ended up starting a venture fund out of that friendship, and meeting Malia Probst and Abby Albright, who became my co-founders in that, and just sort of the right people at the right time coming together with really strong value alignment and a really urgent window of opportunity we needed to act on. So that was kind of how it all came together.
And can I ask you a little bit more about the Women's March project that you were working on?
Sure. That was in collaboration with Drew Kataka, who's a fantastic artist. She works in many different media, but she's doing a lot more in VR these days. And so she created this defiant, immersive piece that listed women's firsts throughout history, cascading out into infinity. So it was things like first woman astronaut, first woman governor, et cetera, et cetera. And we brought women from all over the country inside of it using Pluto, and streamed a conversation about the political moment that we were in and how VR could be a tool for political advocacy and what it meant for women and what sort of the paradigm of firsts meant for us, and kind of getting to this place of firsts not mattering anymore because women are everywhere doing everything. So that it was really, really fantastic, and obviously very timely with everything else that was happening at the time and continues to happen. And so for a first project out of the gate, for me, it was really appropriate in that a lot of my career has been focused on gender equity in tech and equity more broadly. And I wanted to make a strong statement out of the gate about what my vision for what VR could be, and creating a really different kind of set of norms and expectations around the space and the technology itself.
So I was actually a student at the University of Toronto at the time, and I was interning at the Andy Warhol Gallery that we had in Toronto, and I was super fascinated by art and technology and kind of the intersection of both, and just not really happy with too much what was happening in life and my studies. So I decided that I was going to take a gap year and go to the London, UK, and then over there I was like, okay, what tech events can I find out in the city? Like, where is the art and technology intersection here? And I just happened to stumble upon one studio that was selling VR headsets. And they were having a talk on finance and data visualization and using art and tilt brush in spaces. And I was like, put into this headset and wow, this is amazing for people that can't afford actual office spaces or places to work from or just need an escape. Go into VR. It felt limitless. So that really caught me at that point. So I came back from the year there, and I was like, when I was younger, I always wanted there to be some type of mode where if I couldn't actually draw something or articulate something, how can I actually create whatever's in my head into the world? And so I just tried to pursue coding, and I had to like learn by hand, was not in school for it. So looking at YouTube, different programs like free trials as well. So doing all the various emails, like getting as much as I could, going to the public library, taking out books and reading, going to different universities and just hopping by office hours and asking everybody if they like wouldn't mind sharing some of their knowledge. I wasn't equally there, but I'd love to learn. And then political risk always fascinated me. So I was studying political science, so the effect of social human behavior on the economy and looking at political economy as a whole and finding the intersection of, okay, political risk affects people in X, Y, Z ways. So how can we help people manage that risk and being able to do it in VR where it was a lot more intuitive. So that was the original start to the idea.
And can you tell us a little bit more about your vision of using VR to explore political risk?
For a lot of people, it's difficult to start a startup and then not being able to have all the funding and have to be bootstrapped. So if you're going to put your resources into something like VR, you actually have access to international communities, which I didn't have before. So that was one of the things that I was really happy to discover. So meeting people from different parts, being able to collaborate on projects, and knowing people on the ground in different parts of the world that were actually able to communicate or at least be connections to tell you what was happening there. And almost like from a journalistic viewpoint to an actual, I can use this and use it to assess what my actual assets would be in said country and look at it from that perspective.
Diana?
So back to the how do we get into this? So Journey to VR, I'm actually writing an essay about that, and essay/memoir, I guess. But so the very shortest version of the story is that 3 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, there was SIFX. There was, I've come from a filmmaking background, theater background, writing background. I've also been a web developer for 20 years. And got into live streaming video when that started. I was like, oh yay, I can marry my art and tech with live streaming videos. This is getting closer to the two things merging. And then at SIFX, which was a festival within a festival at Seattle International Film Festival 2016, it was a 4-day intensive of nothing but VR demos, panels, the whole state of the art of where it was. And I had first heard about VR in 1990. And back then I was just like, I get it, I understand, I completely understand the potential. And I was like, where is it? I want it now. And then just nothing, 25 years of crickets. And then all of a sudden, SIFX, and I just felt like, all of a sudden I had this epiphany on the first night of SIFX that every single thing that I had been doing my life that seemed like on completely different tracks were suddenly merging in VR at a level that I never expected. And so to find at my age that suddenly my life makes sense on this entirely new level, I have been just a state of elation the whole time. It's a marvelous thing. And I feel like we are in the most fantastic place on this planet for VR content creation. I feel very, very blessed, and I'm very dedicated to making this as inclusive as possible, especially for women.
And can you tell me a little bit about your ideas about inclusivity and what it takes, what that looks like in your mind? What does that mean to you?
Well, just to see the evolution of the community over the last 2.5 years. First of all, coming back from a 35-year background in film and video production, and then another 20 plus years in tech, I can tell you that the percentage of women in the video production and film production has really basically stayed the same all those years. And it's approximately 13% of all job titles. And then in tech, it's obviously even less than that for women. And then suddenly in VR, right from SIFX, I was noticing it was much more almost equal. I wouldn't say 150-50, but a lot closer than I'd ever any of the smaller gatherings of those other two industries that I'd seen. So that was very hopeful and exciting for me too. It was another one of the reasons that I kept saying and wanting to pull people in was just like, the gatekeepers don't exist yet. So, women have a different opportunity. We have a chance to shape the way that this art/tech is going to evolve, and it's been very exciting to see how that's happened. And just the completely unscientific statistics of my own empirical observation of what's happened over these 2.5 years is that it has only grown. I'd say most things are approximately 25 to 40% women. Let's say if we looked around here, I'd say that's about right. And our last VR challenge, which we do cinematic VR challenges over long weekends, and our last one at Pacific Science Center, our 6th edition, was 70% women.
Yeah! Sounds amazing. Thank you. Heather.
All right, so I had a pretty typically atypical entrance into VR. I was looking for a job and looking very specifically for a type of job, and shared management was something that was really interesting to me. And so Pluto VR was also experimenting with shared management. And so my first VR experience was my interview. I had an interview in VR where, with Pluto as a communication tool, I was able to answer questions in VR. And my first step in, it was obviously surreal, like to be able to be in this space that was very barren, really, and speak with this person who, without being in the same physical location, I felt like I was in the same place with. And at that time, Pluto had 2 really cool features. One was a mirror, and that moment of looking over and seeing an avatar and believing that it was me for that moment was just like, oh, this is powerful. This is really powerful. And then being able to throw a ball and just play catch back and forth was this moment of, yep, okay, I get it, I understand. And so shortly thereafter, I met Eva Hirth, and she encouraged me to be part of the Seattle VR meetup community. And that's where I started just doing all of the logistics, because I wanted to, again, bring as many people into this as possible, because the gates are open. And it was a great opportunity to say, I have no background, and look where I am. Like, you can do that too. And so that's been my journey.
And what was the most surprising thing about your VR interview experience?
Honestly, it was how real it felt, despite the fact that the character didn't necessarily look completely realistic. The ability for me to make eye contact the way that I really felt, I felt connected to the person who I was talking to, and that moment of catching a ball was the next step of just like looking at the ball and being like, yeah, I mean, like, there's nothing. My brain doesn't feel any difference between this and actually throwing and catching a ball, despite the fact there was no tactics or anything. So it was just, yeah, this makes sense.
Right. Okay. That's you guys sounds like you have a really interesting story about why you came to this space and how you came to this space. And I hear a lot about your views and your experience as women, as individuals who may not be originally from the tech space. Right. And I would like to hear more about that. What do you think what has been your biggest challenge as women operating in the tech space and in VR or in the tech space in general?
I would say it's probably having people believe that I know the tech. So there's always a slight thing of like, do you know what you're doing? You don't have the background. You're not really from here. So how do you prove yourself to know that for the thing that you know, and having other people believe it too. So it's like double the evidence for like half as much.
Yeah, related to that, for me, it's been raising capital as an entrepreneur, which is why I was motivated to switch to the other side of the table and help to remedy that. But I think it's very much connected to the issue you just described of being taken seriously and given the kind of authority and benefit of the doubt that our male colleagues sometimes usually are.
Well, it was pretty ditto on those things, but also I guess in this experience, because I took an unexpected path to becoming Judy and I creating 6R, we've just been on this rocket ship ride, and I really haven't had to pause too much to think. I haven't experienced a lot of blockages just because of my gender that come to mind. But certainly the thing that I am most concerned about for, just to be able to continue to prove that what we're doing has value, and to be able to we just want to be able to continue being able to do what we've been doing and then some. So the challenge has been being able to make it something that we can survive doing.
I think my biggest challenge has been time. There's so much to do, and there are so many projects that I want to work on and so many things I want to help drive, and time just is constant. And really, I haven't experienced a ton of difficulty as a woman, which I think really speaks to this environment that we have in Seattle, and speaks to the people who have been trying to lead that movement to make it so that I have had as few barriers as I have to be successful.
And I know that Diana, you and Booty built 6R. Can you tell us a little bit about how that began? Like, how did you begin that journey?
Well, Booty and I met through the filmmaking community. We met the women in film, and we both had this idea of we wanted to know what are VR film festivals going to be like, and we'd like to have a VR film festival. But even before that, we'd like to be able to learn how to make the content to be in the film festival. So we thought, how can we do that? Well, let's do our first cinematic VR challenge, and the weekend after CIFX, which I tell Gretchen Berger and Sandy Tiafi, who are the ones who were the directors of that my life is now divided into pre-CIFX and post-effects. And so we rode the fresh wave of interest of that, and it just took off like crazy. I mean, it was so much fun. Just a weekend of people who are just curious, coming in from all different backgrounds, all different skills, all different levels of experience, and pooling our talents and coming up with stuff that just, definitely greater than the sum of our parts. But all 6R stands for Simulated Immersive Experimental Realities. So what we consider the most fun is experimenting with these realities through these different ways that we have now. And so that has helped us build a community and ever an extended family. And each time we did the VR challenges, some people would come back. Some people have been with us every time. But each time we extend the family, extend the reach of what we create through that, and then we have had a chance to show off a lot of the projects that have been made through the cinematic VR challenges at different, we get asked to demo stuff all the time, so we get as much chance as possible to show off what people made. But one of the other, the benefits, one of the reasons this was felt like such a brilliant idea for us is that this is the way for us to just dive in with absolutely bootstrapped, with everything was just donated or lent to us, and so we just sort of created this out of just the passion to make it happen. And sometimes it makes you laugh and remind of how I felt at that first time. It almost goes back to those old Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland. Oh, let's put on a show, it's in Grandpa's barn. So that was what the sort of spirit of the whole thing was like. And then so now that we've done 6 of them. Each time we get new sponsors, new tools and toys to play with. We partner with people like MoCap Now for motion capture, and we'll be working in the next one with Clatter and Din, exploring 360 audio. And we just want to keep finding new ways to bring the tools and toys in, but the way to do it where we are being lent them so that we all can get our feet wet, and then you can decide what you want to invest in after you've had a chance to learn it.
Thank you. And speaking of investing, I just want to skip over here. It's kind of challenging to do an interview for people, but we're gonna get through it. To Martina, You are the founding partner at XR Fund, which is a venture fund focused on women-led AR and VR companies. Can you tell me a little bit about maybe one project that you funded, or one company that you funded, and what excites you about it?
Oh, it's so hard to choose just one. It's so hard. So we are, I should say, we have the accelerator launch this year. We're starting to deploy capital next year. So I can. Did I lose? Oh wait, I got it. Sorry. So I can speak to the companies that have gone through the accelerator, which are emblematic of the companies we'll be investing in. I'm going to choose just a couple because there's some fun ones. So one that I think is just really exciting from a technological standpoint and very futuristic in terms of what we can achieve is called Story Up XR. And they're using a brain-computer interface, the Muse band, to measure brain waves and actually use that to power their experiences. So their experiences are relatively straightforward, gamified experiences, but there's no controller other than your mind. And the objective is to calm your mind and stimulate, I believe, a beta brain state. And they just had their first peer-reviewed study published proving that they could significantly lower rates of anxiety and depression using this tool a few times a week. No medication, no other treatment, just that was able to improve mental impacts, or mental health, rather. So I think that excites me on many levels, but I think that's not a typical use case people necessarily think of, and just kind of stretches the limitations of how far we can take the technology in its current state. Some of the other applications I'm really excited about are actually in the training space. So Conquer Experience is building a product up in Vancouver called Periop Sim, and it's perioperative training for nurses. And they've been able to significantly improve outcomes while decreasing training time. And it's very practical. The return for hospitals investing in this software is easy to quantify and very straightforward. And as an investor, I like to see that because I think some of the challenges with VR right now is there's this amazing content and amazing projects, but the business model isn't necessarily clear a lot of the time. So with something like Periop Sim, the business case is very solid, and you can really drill into the numbers and understand. Oh, okay, I know why customers are motivated to buy this. So I look for that. And another one that epitomizes that is Embodied Labs out of LA, and they're doing caregiver training for end of life and elderly care. And the first time I came out of one of their demos, I was in tears. So it's very emotionally impactful, and also similar to Periop Sim, they've been able to demonstrate a really solid ROI for their customers. So the business case is very clear, and kind of the pathway to scale is also very clear as part of that.
Thank you. That really sounds amazing, especially when you can move things with your mind, essentially. That's like VR telepathy, except it's just real, right?
It's super cool. It's like, I often feel like I'm living in a sci-fi novel. This is awesome.
We are living in a sci-fi novel. All right. So, piggybacking off of that, I want to talk to Preet about just to kind of, because I don't know if I'm the only one that doesn't know exactly what this is, but quantum geopolitical strategies. I didn't get access to Wikipedia before coming here. So
That's okay. That's
yeah, please tell us what you mean by that.
So the idea of geopolitical strategies are the idea of like politics looking at a very specific geographical region. And what we do is we help strategize at looking at those geographies and like what impact that has on you and your portfolio. So the idea of like also inputting quantum into that is the machine learning algorithms and the technology that we use to do it.
Interesting. So give us. Can you give us a specific example of like what that would, in what specific?
What it looks like?
Yeah, what it looks like.
So imagine that Brexit is happening, and you're a multinational.
Brexit. We all know what that is.
Does everyone know Brexit?
So Brexit is basically the UK is leaving the EU, correct?
Yes.
All right.
So that has a huge economical impact. So the idea of splitting up your company or your corporation, depending on where it was incorporated, where your people are, and whether you had people that were sponsored from different parts of the world, So you're looking at the geography of Britain and the EU, and then you're actually looking at what the financial impact of that is. So we would use AI machine learning models to kind of predict the political risk of that to your specific company or your specific assets within that region. And so that would be the political risk would be Brexit.
Now, that sounds like something that could have like a serious impact on someone's political career. Like if you could have a machine predict like outcomes. This is what I'm imagining. Is that accurate?
To an extent. So we wouldn't be predicting outcomes necessarily, but just the impact of potential risk. So this thing X is most likely to be impacted by Y. This has a higher rate than all the other things that are out there for you.
And what excites you about that technology? What do you think is the most exciting thing about this technology for the average person? Like, how does that impact them?
I think it's super, super exciting to be able to look at social human behavior because politics is people and places and just thinking about how all those things interact and just not necessarily knowing or being privy to that. And you just have to figure it out. So the problem solving mechanism of that is super fascinating and it opens up new marketplaces for people. So one of the things that we're trying to do is actually bring in political risk analysts. And you don't have to be great at what you're doing, but if let's say you have a knack for it or you see certain patterns, you're actually able to say, hey, I have this idea, let's see what happens in this marketplace and be paid for it as well.
Okay, that sounds really interesting. Heather, I had a question actually about Pluto VR, and I'm dealing with 5 pages here, so.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you. And I think I may have lost my question. So I want to talk about a little bit more about your journey to this, right? I know you say you're new and also Preet, you talked about learning code, and Diana, you talked about switching careers, all these things coming from all these different directions. It's always a challenge to go into something new, right? And everyone has the experience of feeling like maybe I want to give up, right? What was that experience for you and what kept you going?
So for me, I think I've had a really, really wonderful experience in all of this. I think there were moments when I probably took on too much, and that the figuring out how to manage what was possible for me, and figuring out how to delegate, and working through. Like I said before, there's just so much potential here, and there are so many projects to work on, and so many groups and organizations that are doing amazing things. So what is best for everybody is to really be honest about how you can spend your time, and making sure to be focused on the places where I can have the most impact. So there was, I think, this summer, really, in August, I was juggling like 3 or 4 different projects that I was working on, and I had to let one go, and I had to say, you know, I've got this team that's working on it, I'm going to let you guys take over, and I appreciate everything you're doing, but the things that I have on my plate are just too much. And so that was a really hard thing to say no. I think, especially being a woman, I feel like we don't like to, I don't even think it's admitting failure. I think it's just recognizing the priority and recognizing what's best for all parties involved. And so for me, that was a big experience. It was, you know, not VR. It's especially here in Seattle, has been so inclusive and excited about bringing more people in, and so there are so many opportunities to say yes. And so it's figuring out where you want to make the most impact.
And Diana, have you had a moment where you were like up against a great challenge and you had to kind of really push yourself in this work? And if so, what kept you going?
Well, I've never thought of quitting, but it's also, I don't feel like this is a career change either. It's just an evolvement of where everything I've ever done has merged in this. So in a way, it just feels like inevitable. I was on this path to this without knowing it all this time. So I am so excited to be on it and so excited to see what happens next. I have not had that like wanting to quit moment, but the biggest challenge has been trying to just straddle the birth of a nonprofit. I mean, what Booty and I, this is definitely the hardest thing I've ever done. But I've also been on the boards of arts nonprofits since I was 20. So somehow, again, that's another thing that feels inevitable. Well, of course I was going to end up with my own nonprofit. I've been training for that forever, too. It's like, that's the model that makes sense to me. And, the biggest challenge has been just to really get this thing to take off and have a life of its own, and be able to feel like it's, we've got it. It's achieved liftoff, and I feel like we that's something I feel has happened in the last couple of months, to have that feeling and to be able to more and more make this our full-time thing and no longer have to be doing side things. So.
And Preet, I know that you talked about learning to code and looking everywhere and grabbing different trowels and piecing things together. And not just your challenge around that, but what were some of the other challenges that you faced in this journey, and how did you overcome it?
Well, unlike Diane, I actually felt like quitting several times a day. And I never really thought of myself as a quitter, but it was hard. And, I had to pause my studies. I really wanted to do this one thing, and you pin all your hopes on it. So when it's not working out, you're like, what do I do now? I don't have a degree. How am I going to pay rent? How am I actually going to move forward? The coding, if you can't get the coding, that is the basis of your project. And who are you to say that I know how to build this thing, or I have the knowledge to put this together, when a lot of the traditional systems say that you need the degree, or you need to have the background or the research, and it feels like you're free-falling a lot of the time, and hopefully you land in a very soft cushion, but that you don't see where that is. So for me, it was just believing that even if I was failing or felt like I was failing, noticing what was an actual failure or what was maybe just in my head. And that as long as I was moving forward or feeling forward, it's not a true failure. So that was one of the things. And finding a community. It is very isolating being a coder, and you're just behind your screen, you're just looking at different tabs here and there, you're trying to figure out what's the best for you, but you have no people around you. You just have your resources, and it can be so isolating. So finding even a VR community or Facebook groups or reaching out to people is one of the ways that I tried to stay connected with the community, and they help push me through. So Seattle has been actually exceptional for that.
Thank you. Martina?
I definitely echo the community piece, and I think I've been very fortunate. My career, with my first business is very, very close to my co-founder, and I consider the fact that we're still close friends perhaps even a greater victory than selling the business in some ways, because a lot of the time those friendships don't survive the kinds of trials and tribulations you go through growing a startup. So I think relationships are key, and even just with my WXR partners, having people who are near and dear and equally committed to the vision you're striving to achieve, and with whom you can be completely honest and real about how hard it is at times, because that's the thing. As entrepreneurs, as creators, we're all trying to put our most optimistic and bravest face forward and get the rest of the world excited about what we're doing. And you need to do that. You need to manifest the reality that you're trying to create. And I think it's really important to have people behind the scenes where you can kind of drop that and just be real about everything that's happening, the good, bad, and ugly. And so that's been, I can't imagine getting through any of the things that I have without those kinds of key individuals in that inner core.
And that takes me to my next question. Who are those key? Who were those key individuals, or who are those key individuals in your community that are helping you along this journey? Anyone?
So I'll kick us off. So for me, it's definitely my partners, Leah and Abby, as well as some of our key advisors. So Marco DeMoraz is an advisor and investor in the fund, as well as Desi Levinson out in New York at 645 Ventures. And so there's people we have an advisory board that we've intentionally cultivated and brought into the fold. And then there's informal people as well. So I always find it, even though I'm on the investing side now, some of the people I trust most and confide in locally and in my broader network are fellow entrepreneurs and people who have a certain level of empathy for the experiences I'm going through, as well as just practical knowledge. I think there's a combination of that emotional support and understanding and someone who can give you advice and feedback that is specific and relevant to the problem you're going through. So I've been super lucky to have great partners and mentors through the journey.
Pretty much everything Martina said, but one of the most influential people in my life has been Elizabeth Scallon. So frankly, when I was at the lowest point, actually thinking about giving up, and most founders fail after their first year, and I was about maybe 2 years in at this point, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to drop everything, maybe go to law school, maybe that's it for me, and the thought of that felt like it was killing my soul, and so Elizabeth Scallon was the one to really pick me up by my bootstraps and be like, you're coming to Seattle and we will just see what happens. So I could have failed at any point, but just having someone to believe in you, someone to support you, and being able to fall apart and miss someone was really important.
Okay, well, yes, Booty and I together couldn't have happened without the two of us. We have just been locked on this, like I said, we've been in this rocket ship ride, and we're still orbiting Jupiter. And I can't imagine now how, it's just, I feel very, very blessed in the relationship that we have and the way that we complement each other and the different skills that we bring to the table. But also, Elizabeth Scallon, we were at CoMotion Labs from the day one for the first year and a half. But then as we decided, natural evolution was that we were to be an educational nonprofit. And that's not the model of what CoMotion is for, which is an EVR incubator for for-profit companies. So this has been our base of operations since then, but we've been doing a lot of our work down more in other neighborhoods like Rainier Beach. But so the people who have really made this possible for us, though, are our sponsors, the ones who have believed in us from the very beginning, including people like mocap, now Oculus, wow, big time. They were really the first. Our equipment that we use for demos now and what we're using for editing is donated from Oculus. So I couldn't possibly list all of them, but the continued belief in what we're doing and the way that these people have stepped up to supply us with what we need to make every event we do better and more value added has been really heartening. And I can't even tell you how many people who have said an appreciation, for what we're doing, with tears at the end of every VR challenge. There's people in tears saying, "Thank you so much for doing this. You've changed my life," and that is why we do this. And we're so passionate about. That is the biggest high in the world, is to hear that. So, but none of that would be possible without the sponsors. That is, without all of them, they're the ones who have gotten us this far. So thank you, all of them.
For me, Eva Hirth was the enthusiastic, bubbly, excited, passionate human being that brought me into the Seattle VR meetup, brought me into the hackathon, brought me into the VR AR collective. It was just like, you know how to get things done, and we need that, so let's make that happen. And she's been a supporter for me for the entire 2.5 years that I've been in the industry. Sophia Baldonado is one of my colleagues at Pluto VR, and she's been a person who, working in the industry, understands some of the frustrations that you can get when our industry has this interesting future where we don't know where it's going, we don't know how high it will go each year, we don't know where it's going to go next. We don't know what form it's going to take or what hardware it's going to use, and all of those things are kind of hard for my friends outside of the industry to understand. So to have somebody who I can talk to about those types of things who gets it is really valuable as well. We have such a huge community that it's impossible to list out everybody. We have a wonderful Slack community that I really think is amazing. The She's Coding Slack is also a really valuable place that has an emotional support channel that I think is one of the best things ever to help people kind of get that space for being heard.
And speaking of the future, what is your vision of the future of VR? And where do you see yourself in that future?
There's so many layers to that question. So I think that VR, the way that you are immersed in your experience, is a very precious thing. And I think that, AR has a lot of amazing potential that I think is going to be quicker to kind of turn around. But VR is going to continue to be the space where people can go to have, for lack of a better word, an intimate experience. And I think that being able to figure out how to capitalize on that is going to be interesting, but it's just a really, really unique thing to be able to feel completely transformed, completely transported, completely immersed in your space. So that's a very obtuse answer, but that is the way that I see it. And how I see myself, that is a far too complicated question. I think that there are so many places that I could go within this industry, and that this community has that excitement and drive. And so I love everything about it, and I'm excited to see where that takes me.
Okay, that's a very multi-layered question.
Well, let's just start with one question. And I know better than them ask multiple questions like that. But I do want to know where do you see the future of VR? Let's think 50 years from now. It doesn't have to be next year, but so much can change in 50 years, right? I want you to open up your imagination.
Okay, well, I do need to think about that for a sec, but I do, one of the things that was back to the challenge question, but it's also part of why, the thing that's so exciting to me about this is that we're doing things that no one else has ever done before. So it's all new, it's all experimental, it's all so open, and that's one of the things that's the most attractive to me about it. And also one of the things that excites me the most about bringing the most diverse people in, because I just love to see what people's imaginations are. We have new ways to express mine, and so I just see the whole whoa effect of that immersion, that when I want to keep doing things that elicit that whoa, that there's something different that is different than anything else that you've ever experienced before. I just want to keep exploring the limits of whoa.
Well, let me ask you this. The Matrix, do you see people seeing your movies? They being in your movies is like characters,
Actually, yeah, a little bit I've been thinking about that, because I am thinking a lot as a filmmaker about what is the future of long form storytelling going to be. And so I'd love to think about the idea. So this is one thing I have thought about a lot as far as how this can evolve in the future, and where there could be the chances where you have cinematic experiences where you have either the choice to be a fly on the wall, or whether you can actually, choose to be in the scene and insert yourself. And then also we love the whole choose your own adventure kind of thing. So I just love the way this totally throws out all the rules of traditional flatty filmmaking. And so that's exciting to see where that's all going to be. But oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought. But there's something about being
Take your time.
in the one of the weirdest sensations I'm having right now is the feeling that the world is finally caught up with me. Like, this is what I've been waiting for forever, you know? It's like,
so you're living your future.
So I feel like it was like I was from the future, and now the future is caught up, and now it kind of the timeline's crossing. But all I know is I want to, whatever amount of time I have left, I am dedicated to exploring the farthest reaches of what this can do, as far as I love the empathy factor and the ability to interact with people from afar. Things like, I just want to see what you know, where, I want to be around as long as possible to see where this is going to go. And I'm really excited to have the opportunity to have anything at all to do with how it starts.
Thank you, Diana.
Well, something that I think of when I'm looking at this question is when my parents told me, if you think you have an opportunity, take it. So they encouraged me to come to Seattle. And with VR, I see that there's an opportunity to actually bring people closer together, to change what community means. And when you're thinking about in 50 years, what about the price of mobile? What about the price of mobile VR? And bring those costs down so low that education is possible in rural communities, where the uneducated population becomes educated. You can provide the basics in 50 years. So thinking that it could be crazy and ambitious, but also not impossible, especially with VR.
Thank you.
So to bring it back to sci-fi, I think the best representation, or maybe the most exciting to me, I guess, representation of the future of spatial computing more broadly that I've seen is Rainbow's End, which I think Heather's probably read too. It's a great book, highly recommend it if you're interested in really pushing a vision of what this could be to some of the furthest reaches. And essentially, it's a reality where we are completely immersed in a digital, there is essentially no separation between the digital and physical. And there's no head-mounted device, it's just all embedded in clothing and contact lenses. It's sort of the seamless integration of the digital and physical. And I honestly think that's, I mean, maybe not those exact technical mechanisms, but I think that overall scenario is likely where we're headed. And that's why I think it is extremely important and urgent that we get a lot of voices and perspectives at the table, a lot of diversity on every dimension shaping what that reality becomes. Because otherwise, I mean, we think we're really attached to our devices now, and that they're, you know, a very big part of our existence, which they are. But I only see that increasing exponentially. And so, if we want it to be a reality that is inclusive and something that is a positive experience for a very broad group of people, then I think it's important that people laying the foundation for that represent the people who will be ultimately part of that reality.
Thank you. I just want to do a quick time check. But how long can we go with this? Diana? There's no time limit? Okay, I just want to make sure. All right.
We have the space till 8.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure I'm not going to go over. So, Martina, earlier you mentioned that you had a specific vision for VR that was kind of different from what's happening right now in terms of like online interactive experiences, right? I want to hear more about that vision that you have. Tell us, what does that look like?
I think right now we're separating technology into the different contemporary categories. So VR, AR, MR, so there's a lot of different designations, and so and rightly so today. They are distinct but related technologies. But I think those distinctions will become less and less important over time, and we're already seeing that with a lot of cross-platform functionality. So I guess essentially what I'm saying is, you know, there's and this extends further too. So we're with WXR. We're really a future of computing fund. We have an emphasis in spatial computing, but we're looking at artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, all of these components that are ultimately contributing to a new paradigm for computing. So I see a convergence of sorts where all of these parts that are somewhat distinct right now are going to become increasingly overlaid to the point where it just is, similar to what we have with phones today. A phone was many, many different parts. We had a camera, we had a computer, we had all of these different technologies that were distinct and separate for a very long time, and now it is in our pocket, in our phone. And so I think a similar kind of convergence is going to evolve with computing, and spatial computing being one major aspect of that.
Yeah. See, I think said it a slightly different way. I think that we think about computers as starting out as the size of a room, and over time they've evolved down to the size of a handheld device, and that the next step is for the computer to be everywhere. And what form that takes, whether that's these MR, VR, AR, that part doesn't matter. But the next step will be that we will be able to compute spatially, that we will be able to interact with our real reality and with the virtual space or the augmented space around us in a much more natural way, and which should lower the barrier for a lot of people. There is still a lack of access for people, and so the idea that in that far, maybe 50-year future, we'll be in a place where everybody has the ability to visualize whatever they're interested in a way that works for them. We look at education, and our school systems are set up for a certain type of learner and a certain type of way of doing things. And for the future, we're going to be able to cater to everyone's way of interacting with the world, of learning, of experiencing things in a way that provides them the space to actually get it, to put it into their brains and to really experience it. And that's what's exciting, is that we're not going to all have to do things one way. If we think about teaching as being another great example of that, teachers had to be in the same physical location as their students. And teachers have had a blackboard, and then a whiteboard, and then a projector, and then a touch screen. And that their ability to bring the bloodstream into our actual classroom with us and be able to interact with the brain system and see how it reacts, those are the types of things that are just that's what the future should be, and that's what I'm excited about.
Okay. Thank you. All right. I wanted to ask you another question about the space that you're operating in, not just VR, because I know you're operating in multiple communities. What do you think, what is one thing that people should know about your community? Whether that's VR, whether that's quantum, geopolitical strategies, whether that's machine learning. What do you think that people should know that they don't know already?
I think it's to give the benefit of the doubt, so that things might sound so different, that there's so many different types of technologies that you yourself may not understand how it works, but someone else might, and that it just needs to be given a chance and see what happens, and that you don't know what kind of community can become out of that, and that most people are actually willing to chat or willing to talk, so don't feel insignificant. If something sounds crazy or abstract, go and find somebody to chat to or ask questions and be interested and explore.
I think connected to that in a way, I would say we're all just humans, and what I mean by that is that before I started my first company, I worked at a startup where I had the privilege of working really closely with the founders, and it was because of that experience and learning a lot from them, and also demystifying the kind of persona of the entrepreneur, because I knew them as human beings who are very talented, very intelligent, and also flawed and stressed and confused and anxious, that I thought, I could give this a try. I saw something in them that I recognized in myself, and I think whether we're talking about entrepreneurs or technologists or it's so easy to look at a space from the outside in, or you see someone in a magazine or whatever, and think there are some innate qualities that that person or that group has that I just don't have, or whatever these stories are that we tell ourselves. But oftentimes that's just something we've created as a barrier in our minds, and that at the end of the day, everyone, especially in VR, I think everyone's just like fumbling along, figuring it out. Like it's so new. Everything we're doing is experimental, and it's such an awesome time to just jump in and join in that chaos. Because really, if anyone has a lot of ego and pretense around it, it's about them. It's not about the technology, So I think just that we're all human, we're all flawed, and don't let that intimidate you. Whatever story is going on.
Okay, well, one thing just made me laugh is a big working with our interns and now our fellows. We've had a bunch of different events where we've been doing production and stuff, and things will go wrong. And I've actually, as Eduardo here, he on our first day that we did this, he was helping me with something. And you see this Views camera, the red camera, and I've got it taped to a microphone stand because I don't have a tripod that works for that kind of computer. And I'm just laughing because it's like we are still in the duct tape stage here, and for the fellows that are working with us, I'm like excited for them because as these things are breaking and it's not working, and I'm just laughing going, you guys are gonna laugh and look back and go, I was there when it was like at the dawn of this. You're gonna realize how primitive this is compared to what the world that they are going to be creating and working in by the time they're mature. So I think that's one of the things to just not be afraid of. Again, it's fun still being in the duct tape stage in a way.
Is there a Jean Day in the audience? So for me, I think that I believe that we are all just a series of decisions on a timeline. And that if you were to tell Heather of 5 years ago that she would be in a podcast talking about VR and the experience, there's just no way that she would have believed me. It is really important for those people who are like, I could never be there, to be like, no, you can. You absolutely can. Just make the decision that you want to go ahead and make it happen, and then every decision after that is towards that goal. It's all about your decisions, and yeah, that's it.
I'm sorry, I just had one little thing going back to wrap up where I started about saying how we're interested in the concept of VR film festivals. Well, because now any film festival worth its salt has to have a VR element. But the thing that's also really exciting is that we met, or we were born sort of right around and from CIFX, but so that was in June 2016. And by May 2017, we had a piece that 6R produced in the CIF VR, in their VR exhibition, and again this past year. So that was also really amazing to realize. I mean, we imagined it, and it happened, and it actually happened in a way that we never would have expected, and didn't have to do one single thing to make happen. It just unfolded, and we were in front of the right people who said, yes, we want your piece in our VR. And it's like, oh my gosh. And with regular Flatty film, there's no timeline where you can conceive of something the August before the festival in May and have it produced and out there. So I love also the fact that the timeline is so much shorter with VR. So definitely would love to be. I'm really excited to see how the film festival world keeps evolving for VR, and I'd love to be traveling the world to find out more about that with 6R produced pieces. That is part of how I envision my dream future.
And I think I kind of got distracted when the guy showed up. I was like, what's going on here? we were asking, oh my goodness, I've lost my train of thought. Huh? Oh, we need to wrap it up? Okay. So one last question. If you were talking to someone who was beginning their journey to a VR career, specifically a fellow, what would your advice be?
So VR has the unique ability for you to make anything possible and anything real. So I would say, think about what you're passionate about, what you're excited about, what gets you up in the morning, and realize that that could be like throwing rocks in VR. They're like literally anything, right? And so it's like, what drives you? Figure out how to take that concept, find people who are passionate about it, surround yourself with encouraging, positive people, and experiment, and fail, until you get it right.
I would say just know that it's okay to have the feelings of failure and to feel like everything is just going down in the hole and you feel miserable. It's okay, and let yourself feel that way. And more importantly, take care of your mental health, which I don't think a lot of people do, especially when they're in that mind space. So be self-aware, make sure you know what you're doing, and have your community. Build your community, or just know what to do when you're in those deep negative spaces.
Yeah, amazing advice. I would second all of that. And I think just reiterating to the point I alluded to earlier, that just let go of a lot of the feelings of being on the outside or not knowing, because one of the really beautiful things about this space is that we're all still learning together. There's a very kind of collaborative ethos to the industry, and I think just kind of dive straight into that. That's what I did, and met amazing people like Heather early on who welcomed me in, and trust that, it's going to be difficult, of course. It's not like every day is roses and rainbows, but there are amazing and open and curious and smart people out there who will welcome you, and you can learn from them as well as teach them. I think that's the other thing, is that everyone has something to offer, even if you're brand new day one. So just know that you and your lived experience have value in the space.
Oh, you're not gonna offer some advice, some sage wisdom? Okay, well.
The intensive version.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I just wanted to take a moment to introduce the fellows. Some of them are here today. Myself, Beverly, Eduardo is here, Jakari, he left, and Hafsa, she also left, and then there's Julie, who wasn't able to make it here. We are very appreciative of you coming out and sharing your experience and your wisdom with us.
Thanks for listening. If you haven't already, please subscribe and give us a rating or comment if you enjoyed this content. This episode was brought to you by the City of Seattle's Office of Economic Development and 6R. Mixed and mastered by Joshua Duchesne. Please check the show notes for more information. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, we hope we've inspired you to keep exploring your own journey.